Hello and welcome to Keeping It Real. I'm Joy and I'm your host, and I'm really happy that you could be with me here today on this wonderful Monday afternoon, June 20th, 2022. On this particular video upload, we're going to investigate star forts. I'm going to take you around the world on the globe, which is Google Earth, so you could see with your own eyes the extent of these magnificent feats that the narrative tells us, the mainstream narrative that is, that these star forts, which I have one up on the screen for you, just to give you an idea of what a star fort is, had been all built for obviously civil wars and other wars, which were considered back in the Victorian era forts. That's why they call them star forts. However, you're going to really start to wake up once you start seeing this phenomena for what it really is and the magnitude of what we're looking at when you take into consideration the canals that are built alongside them or around them. They go for miles and miles. The water areas, some of them surrounded by lakes, oceans, and again, going for hundreds of miles, many of them. These are man-made, not just the star fort themselves, but you have to look at the waterways which connect to these star forts. To me, that was the eye-opener, and the elephant in the room was how in the heck could these waterways, these canal systems, be dug out for hundreds of miles. The sheer magnitude of that is very complicated. Even today it would be very, very complicated, even with the tools that we have. And back in the Victorian era, this early or late 1700s, mainly 1800s, which most of these in the mainstream narrative tell us that that's when these were built. So you have to consider the fact that they were very limited, not just with the tools that were used, but machinery, and the fact that they were on a horse and buggy. And once you really see what we're looking at with your own eyes, I think you're going to start to have a shift that's going to take you into a different dimension here. And most of us have stated that these forts, which we call star forts, many that have been repurposed or covered up, dismantled if possible. A lot of them covered up by golf courses, water parks, and some forest. They've planted trees over them. Just trying to cover them if they cannot find the correct narrative. A lot of them have been occupied by military, and this is just isn't in the U.S. It's all over the world, all over the earth, which I'm going to take you on a little trip here on Google Earth, and we're just going to kind of talk through this and let you see as I'm narrating the history of these star forts and the background. And I'm going to be open to comments at the end. If you feel you want to comment on any of this, please feel free to do so. All of that is always welcome. So I'm going to go ahead and launch Google Earth, and we'll begin. Okay, so the first one that we're going to look at, I'm on my Google Earth, is the Statue of Liberty in New York. Now, Again, founded in the 1800s. The amazing thing about the Statue of Liberty is the fact that not only is it massive, but you'll notice that it's sitting on top of a star fort. And I mean, you would look like a little dot, which I'll zoom back in this area just to kind of give you a perspective of the size of this thing. But let's forget the Statue of Liberty and the star fort. Let's look at the island out in the middle of an ocean. They have built this man-made island in the mid 1700s, which we'll go up here. Let's see what they say. Let's go to Wiki. If you type in Wiki here, Statue of Liberty. And let's just kind of see what it says here. Here we go. Where's our wiki? Right here. Statue of Liberty. And if you want to note it, I mean, wiki kind of gives you a lot of information. Of course, it's not the role narrative, but it's the next best one. This is what they gave us. So, 1865. So, and some of these stories are so ridiculous that, like some of the star forts, I found one of them, which I'll be showing you a little further on in the video. Basically, they built within a year, and it's massive, like this one. And that's what I mean. Some of these narratives, these false narratives, are so ridiculous. I mean, what do they think? We're a bunch of dummies or something? Anyway, right here. So, Liberty Island. Okay, it's a colossal statue. They don't really talk much about the Star Fort, although the Star Fort was there prior. You could tell this is pretty old, prior to the Statue of Liberty being set on top of it, which makes you kind of wonder about that too, you know, if that was something that was even always there, because you could never find any construction pictures, of course. You know, you go look through, for construction pictures, and they show you pictures that basically are already like this one here. This is supposed to be the base of the Statue of Liberty. Of course, they don't show you the Star Fort. Do you see there? It's just a drawing, a rendered drawing that doesn't show anything else. This is nothing. You can't really go by that. But nevertheless, you know, this was erected and dedicated in 1886. So let's see here. It says that so they restored it in 1938. And another thing that you'll find is in a lot of these narratives, there's always great fires that seem to burn a lot of these structures, which I'll be showing you one. But let's go back here to Google Earth. But how in the heck could they do this? We're talking back in the horse and buggy day. And this, I mean, how did they do that? You know, I mean, the island itself is a man-made island. And then to carry all these bricks over here to, let's go over there and take a look again. Okay. Oh, what happened here? Okay. To bring all these bricks over here is a feat in itself, just to get the massive bricks. And you could tell this is like really old. And look how small the people are in comparison. I mean, they're just really, really tiny. So, you know, you have to take that into consideration. And the thing about these star forts, let's go to this one here, which is basically Fort J, which isn't far from there. This one here is also a colossal one. that is in Florida. And again, you you have to, and this one here is also covered by a large body of water. And this was also in the 1700s. So, every state, and some states, there's like New York, there's multiple star forts, and these things are massive. Um, and most of them are all out of brick, solid concrete. So you have to think and consider, how could they have done these feats all during the same time frames, not just here in the U.S., pretty much in every single state. Um, this one here, you can kind of walk in the enclosure here, but you look at these monuments that are up here, these antiquitex, and just the sheer size of this thing, which goes in outer, I mean, there's outer rings on this thing that, and filled with all the dirt. You would have to fill this too, which would, most of these were built within 3 years, with one of them being built, like I said, within a year. So you have to really think here, what the heck, how could this even be possible unless these were already here? Like a lot of the older structures that we're seeing, I mean, look at the sheer size of this thing. On an island, okay, out in the ocean. So that means that they would have to carry, or, by boat, all of the bricks. They'd have to make them first, of course. And this is all during when the different wars were going on, the Civil War, the Pennsylvania War, the Waterloo War, the Lincoln invasion, the Washington invasion. I mean, all within 100 years, they had all these major wars going on, which is why they supposedly built all these star forts, to offer them protections, and, for every city, and some multiple star forts within the city. So some of the states had not even been fully formed yet, so the population size was pretty small. And I thought that was kind of ironic. And then you go to, let's see, this one here is pretty interesting too. Let's see, let's go here, Crown Point. So this one looks a lot older, and it looks like, it's been hit by some kind of cataclysm, which we know happens throughout time. There's just no, and let's not forget all these, massive bridges that, if you go back and you try to find any construction, you see a lot of, repair work being done, but these structures were clearly already there. Some of them have facades over them, so they try to cover up over the brick so that they appear newer, not as old as what they really are. I don't want to, throw that off or give that little detail away. But this one here is an ancient star fort. You could see this is the hill surface of the star fort. Is covered by debris. Under here, I'm sure we have solid brick like this, and it's just been covered over. And again, when you have water coming up over these islands and around the coastal area during a catastrophe, like, let's say, a polar shift, it's going to bring all, just like in Machu Picchu in South America and some of the ancient sites there, you see all these megalithic stones that are going back even further to another catastrophe cycle previously, but they're just strewn around like tinker toys all over the place and covered in mud. And I mentioned that before, that some of them have shells and sea fossils and things like that. So that the ocean waters once covered that area, and they've had to dig most of those structures out of the hardened mud and ground. So or ground dirt. So again, this is a star fort that is pretty massive in size. So I'll show you here on Google Earth what I'm talking about, and I just lost Google Earth. Okay, I'm going to show you some other pictures. But now that I have you here, just give me a second here. Let me pull back up Google Earth. I'm not quite done. Okay, and we are back to Google Earth. Okay, so what I wanted to do was take you to this Majesty Fort at Crown Point. This is in New York as well. Now, that's the one we were just talking about that looked like it had been hit by a cataclysm. So you can see, this is like a little house shed something over here, but you could see the massive size. Now this one is not on an island, but it's near the coastal area here. But you could clearly see the star fort. Again, not only are these in the U.S., but they're all over the world. Fort J is another one that, I showed you that one. Let's go to, actually there was two in Florida that I thought would be pretty interesting for you to kind of get a look at. These canal systems and waterways, they're just as mind-boggling because you could clearly tell they're man-made. And, just to survey these things and dig them out with a horse and buggy is a feat in itself. I mean, geez, these people deserve a lot of credit, I'll tell you. Never seen anything like it. I think it's Fort Jefferson. Yes. So we're just going to go right here. Now this one was off the coast of Florida, and pretty interesting as well. And again, I just want to give you an idea of just the size of these star forts. Now this one is out on an island, clearly a star fort. You see the pointed points of the star here, and to bring all of this out on this island is pretty crazy, if you think about it, because again, there is brick. Most of these are all built out of brick, like I said. So not only would they have to make the brick, but they would also have to ship it over here to these islands and unload it, and at the same time they're making all these other star forts in every single state right at the same time frame. So this kind of gives you an idea of the size of this one. This is just the front entrance, and I mean, it's just magnificent to see these structures. I don't know how far we're going to be able to. Let me get it to 2D here. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea of the size. And to bring in not only the brick, but you would have to build the island, of course. Maybe this one was already standing, could have been, but you still have all the dirt that would need to go inside the borders, and then place all the millions and millions of brick all the way around. So you would need to have a lot of manpower to do this. It would take 10, 20 years, even with today, even with a lot of manpower. I mean, it's just crazy to think that these things actually are all over the place, and not too many people are aware of that. And not only here in the U.S., but I'm going to show you some that are around the world that are pretty crazy as well. But while I have you here on Google Earth, there's something I wanted to also just kind of give you an idea of. Now, there was a this here. I wanted to just kind of talk briefly. I know we're on the star forts, but I wanted to talk briefly about this article here that was in 2021, and which was just last year, that talks about the Arctic, which is the North Pole, and the ice sheet. Now, this picture here was one that NASA obviously had taken, and it says sea ice in the Arctic appears to have hit its annual maximum extent after growing through the fall and winter. The 2021 wintertime extent reach in March 21st ties with 2007. Okay, so this region's always covered in ice, as you know, as they're showing you. And over here you have Greenland. Now, let's take another look at that. And this is, again, some of the region there. It's just beautiful. But let's go take a closer look at that particular area once again. On the live Google Earth. There we go. Okay, now here's the U.S. over here. This is Canada. Okay, and we just kind of move it along here, and you have Greenland, which is right next to the Arctic. Up in these regions, we have Russia. Now, this is the Arctic, the North Pole. All the ice is gone. Wow. Actually, it's been gone for a few years. Slowly dissipating. And this is an actual image of what's left. So, and you could actually go over in these areas and you could see all these wetlands in here where the ice had melted. And, they just forgot to tell us. And they forgot to update their picture, or maybe they pulled up the wrong one and they just conveniently missed that there's no ice. And they forgot to let us know. So, what was that about the flooding that would happen once this ice melted? Greenland's still all intact. Wow, no flooding. Well, maybe they meant when the South Pole melts, then we'll have the massive flooding. So just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention there. So, okay, I wanted to show you some other photos, which are these images here. We're going to look at some more star forts. Now, these are all in the U.S. Now, I just kind of wanted to show you. Now, this is off of the island over in New York. But, you could see the weathering here. And, I mean, this is just ancient. But, again, you have to figure, feeling, I mean, again, you would be just like a little speck here. So you have to imagine building all of this brick all the way around. Well, first you got to build the island, that would have to come first. And then the brick and then the debris and all that. So let's just kind of take a look here. This is an older picture from the 60s that I was able to find of the same one. This is another one. And again, I think this one was in Maine. And I'm just going to kind of go through here as I'm talking, but the ones that you're looking at now on the screen all are in the U.S. So and this particular picture is a man-made island, again, with a star fort on it. And, you know, you could clearly see that it's a man-made island, and that the star fort was placed there with the waterways dug around it, for a purpose that, you know, has to probably do with some type of energy going back in time that has been kept from us, by the people that sat in high places. We'll talk more about them another time in another video. And again, this one here, this one's actually pretty massive. I think this is Fort Wayne. And most of the governments, our government here in the U.S. owns pretty much all of these. So they've, you know, turned some of them into golf courses and hidden them. And the ones that they found a narrative for and had a hard time covering them up, they just figured, you know, hey, we built these, and, you know, back in the day, you know, Mama and Papa, and you know, we were part of the Civil War. We needed these for our cannons, and, you know, we decided to put a mansion there for you know, the guys who were guarding the fortress and so forth. So you can see the mansions sitting there in the middle. Massive, and again, massive. So, and again, you see the American flag. This is a really beautiful one. Just massive. That one was in New York, actually. A lot of them are near the coastal regions. This one's Texas. So, and it seems like every single state, or every single narrative that's given, you know, talks about a different war that apparently went on during that time. So, you know, you kind of makes you start questioning all these different past wars that we've had, and just, you know, did they really even happen? And was there just maybe a massive wipeout of people, civilization? And you have, after it passes, you have others that were fully aware of what had transpired, and then began to put claims on the structures that are left, and maybe repurpose them and fix them up a little bit if they suffered some damage. So now, I thought this was kind of interesting as well. These are some monuments that were in Washington, and let me just get this up here. Sorry, just hang on one second. And let's go back to this one. Oh, let's start with this one. Sorry. Okay, so, you know, like this obelisk that apparently was erected, you know, along with the other monuments that are in the D.C. area and at our state's capital. So these obelisks, another coincidental thing is that they are everywhere, every single country. I used to think that they were just in Egypt, okay, but I knew we had the one here in the U.S. But not only do we have the one in the U.S., but we have them in every single state. And these things are massive, just like the ones you see in Egypt. And again, horse and buggy day. These were all built in the 1800s. So some of them, they've had to fix them up a little bit, you know, but and no construction pictures. And the construction pictures that we do see, which you could go research yourself, but later I'll be showing some of those. All the construction pictures are showing you a monument or a structure that's already there. And, you know, they put a few scaffolding boards and a few men out there with shovels and a few buggies, you know, pulled by a horse, and that's their construction picture. So, and the canal system here, you know, the large fountain that's in the center, I mean, you see how small these people are. They're like little ants. And you see how massive that is. I mean, just to dig that out, to do the surveying and to dig that out is, Yeah, that would be hard to do if you just had a horse and buggy. And not only that, then you're erecting all these star forts at the same time that you're building these monuments and these waterways, and you're doing world fairs, which wait till we get to those videos. Those are just going to blow your mind, probably set you over the edge. This one here is the Lincoln Memorial. And again, this one has its own waterway here, lake in front with fountains and columns, Romanesque style. This is the state's capital. Now, I did find this older picture here, which I thought was pretty cool. This is it under construction. This is the construction photo. So the trees were already obviously there. They planted the trees way ahead of time so that they could get fully grown, of course, and then they erected the structure. So I think they were probably, doing some work on the top of the dome. But you do see some antiquitex there too that, this is probably someone's home. This is the inside of it. Look at these massive columns. Some of these places are just absolutely magnificent. You think the outside is really something to see. You should see the inside of these places. And again, they also go deep underground. So, most of them had been covered probably in mud. So again, this is, an older picture. You see the little horse and buggy there. They were still working on it. And you see there's no roads, nothing like that. You see a couple guys standing on the steps. This is the oldest picture. This one was in the mid-1800s. So right about the same time they started doing photography. This one was supposed to show the White House here just being completed is what it was. So pretty impressive, huh? All done with horse and buggy. And again, they were also building this monument at the same exact time. So, and this one has its own waterway, its own lake and fountains, and you see the people all sitting around on the steps there, and the big statue in the center, and the big dome too. Wow! And again, you have the Romanesque columns, and they also were building this. This is a museum, and they figured, we need a museum. We better build a museum. This looks pretty ancient, though. I'm sure that really goes back in time. Of course, a lot of my talk here is being humorous, and sarcasm is obviously, going to play into the video here, because it almost has to, because it's just like, I can't believe that they expect us to believe them that they built all these structures, and how absurd it really is. This is inside the entrance of the Lincoln Memorial. Or excuse me, no, it was the museum, sorry. So this is kind of the steps. Just to give you an idea, I mean, look at the columns on the top. And marble, that's solid marble. Okay, now marble's always imported, so boy, they must have had to get some big ships to bring that over, and then to carve it all. Wow. Oh, this was another picture. This was an early picture of the construction. And it's, of course, look at the bottom half, or the bottom portion of the structure. That is pretty interesting, because that tells me that it goes down pretty deep. And we all know there's underground tunnels. And let's not forget about that. They would have had to build all the underground tunnels, which is really something to see. And then, they covered the rest up. But this is probably, honestly, we're speaking in truth now. This is probably how it was found. And they are in the process of repairing it, because it was repurposed and claimed by those in high-powered seats, high-powered places. And this is it again. So here you can see that they've built a brick wall around that one area there that you see for the underground portion. But just look at the massive size of this thing. And again, this was during the same time, simultaneously, when they were building the White House. So this is the Lincoln Memorial. And this is just a couple of them. I'm only showing you a few, which is nothing in comparison to the real scale of what they've built, all during this time frame within a short period of time. And then you also have all those massive cathedrals going on that were erected and built, and just massive. And again, this was a close-up shot of the building, but you see a little bit of scaffolding on the side over there. Again, I think this was just either staged, or they were showing them. This is how it was found. They dug it out of the mud away from the bottom portion, for whatever reason, maybe to do some ongoing repair work to it from maybe damage from a cataclysm. Not maybe, probably so. And here again, you see nothing else around it. There are trees way back in the back that are there. You see other structures to your right, and you see it just sitting there by itself, because again, that's probably what this. In the center here, you see this train here, and don't forget, they also had to build the railways. That was another feat, which again were probably already there. So, in some of my other future videos, I'll hone in on that and give you a better perspective, and why myself and others included believe that those railways were already in place, along with other technologies that have been kept from the mainstream public. So, but here, they're probably removing a lot of the mud and dirt that probably had covered most of the structures after the cataclysm. So they're just clearing the way, is what we believe they were doing here. But clearly the structure was already there. And again, if this was in fact a new construction, this one's a little later on and there's snow on the ground, but you see the trees are very mature. Like I said, you see these little shacks to the right. That's probably more or less what they did know how to build, was little wooden cabins and shacks and barns and things like that. Those things that we know did exist and were built from the 18th and early 19th, even the 1700s. But surely not these monuments and these structures that are just solid and massive, megalithic. So if you know anything about megalithic sites, you know that there was an ancient civilization, just like the pyramids. We look at that and we know that they were not built by the Egyptians. There's just no way. Even today, they still cannot figure out how those were built and erected. And they're everywhere. They're on every continent around the world. So again, harnessing some type of energy way back when, probably when the Anunnakis were present on this earth, and probably built by them, because we know there was giants, and the Bible tells us this. Now, this picture here is pretty interesting too, because again, this is a Lincoln Memorial, and you have that cleared waterway that was probably covered in mud at one time after the cataclysm, but clearly the waterway and the monument itself and some of the other fountains were there. And, they probably opened up, once they cleared away some of the mud and debris, the water filled it back up. Through back in the back, you see the lake there and the waterway coming through the back area, and then there's a little bridge. So, but pretty impressive. This one too. So, this is today, but again, that monument is really something to see. Now, these are some star forts that I wanted to show you that are around the world, and they're in not just on every continent, but every country, and some countries have multiple, 15 of these things, and they're all very, very massive. Australia, and you see this one here, you can see the outline of it. Some of it's been hidden there and covered by trees and shrubbery, but it's pretty massive. This is another one. Looks like they're trying to repurpose that one. Another one. We have Brussels, Italy, South America, Spain, Israel, or not Israel, but Iran and Iraq. China. This one actually is in China. And there's also one in Japan. I mean, they're everywhere, and some countries, with multiple. And again, this one here, if you look at the structure with the little tunnels there, you can see that this one also has an underground tunnel system. So you have to also take that into consideration. This one here was in Spain. Now this one, again, is covered the whole area. It's in the middle. It's an island, man-made island that is made into a star fort. So that means that wasn't there, that they had to build that. So not only the fort itself, the structure, but the actual foundation, which is in the shape of a star, and clearly man-made. These are not a natural phenomena. Yeah, they're phenomena, all right, but they're not natural, that's for sure. And as I've stated, there are giants, that lived on this planet before we came along. And some of these structures are just so massive. Let's go back and look at that one a little more. Massive in size that, and the way that they're built is the doorways, the entryways. I mean, they're built for giants. They're built for extremely large statured people. And this one here has the waterway all the way around. And you can see there that it's a canal all the way around surrounding the star structure. So whenever I see water and these kind of forts, because most of them are built near the water, most of them, or they do have a canal system around them. So that's telling me that they were, harvesting water in a way that was creating energy like we do today in some places. Look what we have, the big on Lake Erie, we have a big power plant there that is using the water to generate power. They're all over now. They're becoming more and more popular. But again, this utilization of these large water plants, power plants that are, using the water to generate the power, these are an ancient technology that has been here way before we came aboard. And I'm going back to the time of Mom and Papa, when my great-grandparents came here. And those were not being utilized. So either they didn't know how, or they purposely kept it and found a better way to utilize energy in order to keep it from being a free source of energy, like everything else. We're even paying for water, for God's sake. You're paying for water to water your lawn, your home, power. everything, it's just keeping us enslaved to a system that basically, this one here has a canal system, keeping us enslaved to a system that, days before, going back to the old days, before Mama and Papa, this was probably all free. And people lived obviously a lot more comfortable. Their buildings and structures, as you can see, were built in a way to last. And this one here, you see the little tiny cars way at the bottom there. And you see all the water away. I think this is in the Virgin Islands. But you see the little cars there that look like little tiny ants in comparison to the structure itself. So, this is a massive, and they have a whole city built within the star fort here. This one was in Italy, or France, excuse me. So, this is really, really something. And you have to say, why would they keep all this from us? Like God's word tells us, money is the root of all evil. Not that money is evil, because obviously it's not. And I think, it can serve a good purpose for civilization and people, and allows us to have a lifestyle that each one of us are unique and desire to have, that's different from others. But we have to say that somebody along the way abused the system and put us in a position where we're basically a slave to the system that's broken. And the truth is just now coming out in these last end of days. And God is opening our eyes to the evil that has been existing here for a very long time. And these people on this particular one, this is also a star fort, but you could see that this one was blasted by a cataclysm. I believe this particular photo shows the star fort wall, where when it was obviously uncovered, you see all this blackening on the wall. And we have these different cycles of cataclysms, one being a polar reversal and a shift, and the other being a solar micronova that blast out heat and fire that will burn everything at a high heat, except brick. Some brick will get melted, though, depending on how close it is to that blast. And this would be the result. You would see burning and blackening of structures, particularly brick. And I do and have showed pictures of melted brick. Ironically, nobody would ever think that brick can be melted. They use it in ovens and everything else, and brick ovens for pizza, and so obviously it can withstand a very high amount of heat. But we're talking 12,000 degrees Celsius, so you're looking at a temperature that would basically be as hot as the sun, which is exactly my point. It would have to be that hot to cause brick to melt. So, and you see this blackening on the surface of this particular star fort. And probably some that are older do and did have this. And, either they've, re-facaded it, covered it in cement, the brick, to not show that, or they've covered it in dirt and destroyed the star fort, or made a golf course out of it, or a water park or theme park, which they've done with many structures like this. Or, it is in its original condition and it wasn't affected by the solar blast, because it was probably built maybe a little bit later, but certainly not in our time frame as stated in the false narrative, which if you read, most of these structures are all built in the, let's say, from the 1600s on up, which is impossible. Most of them in the U.S., of course. We were just forming our states in the early 1700s, Declaration of Independence, 1776. So you have to consider those timelines and what was happening, which if all these civil wars were going on, how in the heck could they have the manpower if they're protecting and fighting and building these structures? But I'm sure the women and children weren't building these structures. So who built them? But we know, because they didn't build them. Somebody else did, probably giants. So, especially when you see the islands that they're sitting on. Be ridiculous to think otherwise. This is inside one of the forts. This was one of the castle forts. And, I mean, obviously, if they were fighting a war, they weren't certainly having the time to paint these murals and do this elaborate detail on this ancient or this antiquitech walls that clearly are made of marble and beautiful carvings and murals that took a significant amount of time to paint. This one's pretty interesting. Out in the middle of the ocean, of course. This is off the coast of Spain. And this isn't quite a star structure unless it's under the water, which I think it probably is. And that we're only seeing the top portion of the star fort. So we're just seeing that. But you could tell that this is clearly very, very old. And their narrative for this particular one is it's a water treatment plant that they built. So, and then it's no longer in use. It hasn't been in use probably 10 years after they built it. They didn't need it. That's the narrative they give us. But clearly this probably was not a water treatment plant, as they say, but a star fort, and the remaining star is under the water still. Or not, but maybe just someone's castle from a long time ago. And it would be very difficult to build this out in the ocean. And that's the end of our presentation video. And I do thank you for sitting in on this video presentation, and I hope that you like and you will subscribe so you can be notified of future videos. And I just want to put out there that I'm not doing this for a living. I'm not making money off this. Not yet. Yeah, one day I probably will, but that's not the reason why I'm doing these videos. I'm doing these because I am trying to educate people and wake them up to the things that are all around them, even in the city where you live, and even where I live, which is in Fresno. I live in California. I'm not proud of that, but I have to put it out there. And there are so many things that I'm uncovering just where I live that I just never took notice of until I started getting into this research. And now I'm seeing it everywhere, and I'm like, haha, there's another building that clearly was not built during the time that they say it was built. And, you could just start to spot these things. But, that's the purpose. It's to open you up, let your imagination kind of just, take it in and go with it, and don't put parameters on it. These parameters that we've been taught to put around us to, keep us looking straight ahead and not taking the time to look around and look around where we're at, even, is something that we need to do. Each of us need to do that and allow God just to kind of open your heart and your mind to these things, because he has a lot he wants to show us. And these are, remember, he created everything, and it's all for his purpose and his glory. And I want to leave you with that. So I love you, and until our next video, good night.